Hello, Right Hivers. We're back with a one-shot workshop and happy to have here today TJ McLaughlin, who is very adept at building one-shots, building systems, and has a new system that someone might not be familiar with today that might be interesting. Absolutely. And so anybody who is familiar with 5e, mechanics are similar and stuff. And let's play with a little superhero one shot today. TJ, do you want to say something about the upcoming project you have and your background with one shots and all?
Sure. So my name is TJ McLaughlin, like you said, and I have some books out and stuff like that, as you can see there. I can never remember how this is reversed. But yeah, I have some books out and stuff. But I participate in a thing called Extra Life, which is a 24-hour gaming marathon that we do every year to raise money for Children's Miracle Network hospitals. I play for Boston Children's, and what my party has done for the past 10 years is I design a one shot, 24-hour long one shot TTRPG campaign. And then we play and live stream that as our fundraiser every year. And so we'll be doing our fundraiser this year. We're playing around with the idea of maybe doing a video game this year for the first time, but we're not sure yet. But that'll be November 1st and 2nd. We do it as two 12-hour days, 9 a.m. to 9 p.m.
Info for that available at temclaughlin.weebly.com and check the Discord for the link on that. We'll have that up for you guys to check that out coming up. Lots of interesting things on there as well. As you said, TJ, you not only, play games, DM games, but also design modules as well, or libraries, was it?
Yeah, so I have a tab on there called Gaming Resources, which includes things that I've built. It's new, I'm still populating it, but it includes things that I've built for campaigns. So we're going to be working in Foundry today. There's modules. If you use Mutant to Masterminds, which is the system that we're using today, Foundry doesn't provide modules for advantages or powers, but I've created them and I have them available for download there. I also have a table for working out crit tables for D&D and stuff like that. So there is things like that, as well as a system called the archetype system that I'm currently designing. You can follow its progress on there as well.
Hey, you like it a little more crunchy, or you like the kind of soft play?
I definitely go very crunchy quite often.
Nice. Oh my, the more you like math, the more you like these, absolutely. But in the meantime, we're gonna do it for all levels for sure. And let's say this. So Mutants and Masterminds, I believe was the name of it, correct?
Yes, Mutant Masterminds third edition.
Heck yeah. And that's kind of based on, if you're familiar with D&D and, like Roll20 and stuff like that, not terribly dissimilar, but superheroes. And
Yeah,
so let's get into Foundry and a good tool for building one-shots, y'all. And TJ's kind of walk us through how to use Foundry and move on to building our one-shot today.
right. So Foundry is something that you have to download and get a license for. The license is $50 last I checked. But you can play as many games as you want using that license. The catch is that you can only have one active at a time. So, which is never a problem for me because I'm always DMing, so I'm not running two games at the same time. It doesn't matter. But when you open it after you have it and you download it and everything like that, you're at this kind of home screen, the game worlds. You have to make sure that you have the system you want to play with downloaded, any kind of modules you want. These are all kinds of fancy stuff that is really secondary. I'm not going to be using them today. Um, and then once you have a system in place, you can create a game world. I've created one here called Right Hive. Hungry Dark was last year's D&D 3.5 event. Andrew's March is a campaign we have running. These are all stuff that we've done sessions with. I'm gonna go ahead and launch Right Hive.
And so this can all be done on paper. You guys don't need to go this way, but this is a tool for, setting yourself up and being much more organized. So I love this as something you can not only keep all your thoughts on there on the internet, shareable and stuff like that, but also, yeah, play with others online too.
Yeah, because our group does. We have my gaming group is we play online, and I have people from all over. the last few years we've had people from Buffalo and San Diego and stuff like that in the party, and so we all play online, and it's just very easy to do it with a tool like this or with Roll20 or something like that. And I find that whatever method I'm going to be using to run the game is the place that I want to create everything. So since I usually play on Foundry, I'm going to build on Foundry. But everything that we're talking about today can be done on paper.
Yeah, heck yeah. I so a one shot generally, 3 to 5 hour playtime. Your characters will try and break your game. Will try and go sideways to it. Sometimes a one shot turns into, we're gonna need another session or two, guys. But I generally pretty compact. Get people to learn the game, or at least have a different kind of experience if they are experienced gamers. I Let's talk about the first things you need to know. What are you designing when you look at building a one shot first?
Yeah, so I have grouped here kind of my outline for stuff that I think is important to hit. You'll notice if you're reading it, if you can read it, if not, I'll read out loud in a minute. But there's step one is determining your basics, and I have as subpoints duration, party, basic story, system, and PC expectations. And it doesn't necessarily matter what order you do those in, but all of those need to be done before you move on. Um, so duration is how long is the one shot going to be? Like you said, a lot of times people when they think of one shots are thinking about 3 to 5 hours. Me, because of my history, I'm thinking about 24 hours more often than but I have done some that were much shorter. And so kind of figure out your duration. One thing that I find very helpful for this type of thing is that players are going to be unpredictable. They're going to be doing things that you weren't planning. They're going to want to explore side things, or they're going to skip something, or things like that are going to happen, or they're going to solve a problem in a way that you didn't see coming. That's going to scrap chunks of what you have planned. But they're also going to get very creative. And so normally, what I actually do is, let's say I'm doing a 24-hour one shot. We break for meals because of the nature of the game that we're doing. So there's like 4 hours there. So I'm looking at actual 20 hours of actual gameplay.
Always
What
got to
I'll
break
actually,
for snacks. Absolutely.
yeah, what I'll actually do is plan for about 15 to 18 hours, um, with a lot of room to add things if I need. Like if it looks like it's something where because combat might go long or something like that, I might plan for that. If it's something that I know we're going to, especially if it's something I know we're going to struggle with. A few years ago, we did a Star Trek game, and my friend actually planned it. I didn't. But we did a Star Trek FASA game, which is a very insanely crunchy system. Um,
And
and
let's
so
clarify this as well. Crunchy, we mean a lot more numbers, a lot more
there's
calculations versus a softer system like D&D 5e, which gives you a lot more leeway to kind of rush through combat versus systems like Pathfinder and other ones where you're going to be doing the math for each person's turn and it takes longer.
yeah, yeah, and I mean there are some systems that are the opposite of crunchy. Tends to be systems where there might not even be combat, or combat might be extremely stripped down. But yeah, so with that one, we knew that we were going to have to be learning the system in the process. And so what I advised him to do was actually to plan for something more like 12 hours of gameplay, because there was going to be so much of learning the system and stopping to be like, wait, what options do I actually have here? And things like that. But if I,
Nerf a couple in the beginning. Just get
yeah,
people to learn how to even, it's a tutorial sometimes in a way.
yeah. If I think they're going to breeze through it though, what I'll actually do is design longer. Like for the 24-hour thing, I might design 30 hours of content and know that we're probably going to skip, yeah, 6 or 7 of these hours. And it's all flexible. I can do that. But think about your party, think about that stuff, think about how long it's actually going to take, how much time you're going to have to spend educating them, how creative these players that you're playing with are. And don't, I find that if you plan very rigidly for a specific set amount of time, it's not going to go that way. So you either want to give yourself a little bit of leeway, or you want to give yourself time to explain things and still finish the story. But knowing how long you're going to take is important to that. That's going to be that's also going to tie into the party, like knowing who you're playing with, knowing what level they're at. Even if you don't know specifically who you're playing with, if you know that you're going to, say, a convention, you're going to be doing a 2 hour panel or something in which you play a one shot for people who don't know that system. Expect that you're going to have to explain the system, things like that.
Cool.
Um, pick your system. As I said, I'm gonna be working in Mutants and Masterminds today, but everything I say, other than like the details of character creation, everything I say is applicable to all systems. It's just a general, here's how you make a one shot. But you want to pick your system and figure out what, how you want to be playing that. Whether or not it's even a good system for the story you want to tell. Different games are better at different types of. Um,
I
and so
love
if you
this
know,
idea of mutants and masterminds being relatively a D20 system, but this is an interesting thing in there is a toughness save
mhm,
versus hit points.
right.
You don't really count, most people are familiar with hit points if you've played a video game or anything like that, but this has you are not damaged at all, if you're strong enough to survive the hit.
Pretty much, yeah. So it is very much this system is slightly less crunchy than say the Star Trek one that I mentioned because its focus is on recreating the feel of a comic book. And so there's a lot of things in there where like physics don't necessarily work the way you expect them to because it's comic books physics, but also things like that. Like you can shrug off hit after hit after hit. And it's down to when you fail to shrug it off, then it affects you. And it takes a few of those to knock you unconscious, and then
Very particular to superheroes. Heck
yeah,
yeah.
very like superhero stories. And it's pretty good at replicating that feel. And because it's trying to replicate that feel, there's a lot of things that it's not going to do as well as D&D. Um, like hit points and combat just plays out very differently. But also, it you noted that it uses D20s. It only uses D20s. Like everything is a D20 roll. There's
Skip
no
the
other
bag
option.
of dice.
Yeah. So, so that's the type of thing you're looking at though is what is the system that's going to tell the story that I want to tell? If you want to do a dungeon crawl, Mutants and Masterminds is not going to be good for that. But if you want to tell a superhero story, frankly, D&D isn't going to be good. And so you really kind of want to think about what the system is made to do and what fits best with the game that you're going to play. Finally, for the determined basics is PC expectations. This is this is very important. I don't think people always think about this as much as they really should. It is how much of the story am I expecting the characters to carry? Am I expecting the players to build their own characters before or at the beginning of the one shot, or am I planning on building characters that they then pick from? You know, do I expect them to know the system ahead of time? All this type of stuff. These PC expectations are crucial, and it's crucial to not only have those in mind, but to communicate them to the players. Make sure that everyone's on the same page about what it is that you're expecting them to do and what they can expect from you for this one shot to work. Because you're really in a long term campaign, you have time to maybe hit a roadblock and realize you forgot to talk about a thing and kind of sort that out and move on. In a one shot, you really don't. You have to. Everyone has to be on the same page from the beginning about exactly what is expected of everyone in order for this story to work.
Yay. So I think right now we probably want to take like 5 minutes and just have the participants write down what your expected duration is. A couple of notes on that. Do you want to go over? Do you want to go under? The system you want to choose. And if you are more familiar with different systems and stuff like that, consider the pros and cons of a couple of them. Do you want it more crunchy? Do you want it more soft? Why are you picking your system? And your PC expectations. I other than that, I let's do camera off for like 5 minutes and just kind of talk about or I'm sorry, let people write
Mhm.
I what they're doing and come back to look at moving on and building more of the game.
All right, awesome.
All right. That's about 5 minutes. Hope you guys had some good time to write down some things. I love the idea of a typical one shot and doing puzzles over combat.
Mhm.
I to try and keep it moving for sure.
Right.
I know that I'm going to be dealing with rank amateurs, people who have not played before, and so I do want to nerf an early combat just to kind of do that tutorial kind of thing. Kobolds came to mind, so I'm definitely going to use some little fools to try and teach them about how to swing a sword. And I wrote down some things like what's the job? I need to figure that out. What the job that these people are being recruited to do, and I have a couple of ideas: rescue the last group that tried to, or find a certain item, but real basic things. I'm just
Yeah,
starting out here.
makes sense. Yeah, so for mine, I had the screen share going, so I don't know if people saw it, but under my journal tab here, I created a new journal entry called Basics. Railroad out. I'm planning and for an extra life thing, so I'm looking at 24-hour game. Um, since it's probably the same group that I've played Mutants Masterminds with before, we've done a few campaigns with that. I'm assuming they're familiar. I know how they play it, so I'm going to plan for 30 hours. So I have a lot of material to throw in if they get through stuff quickly. Party, the usual suspects. Like I said, it'd be the same group. Basic story. I had this idea where there's this realm of dreams, the city of nightmare. Something has escaped it in a setting called Liberty City that I have started to design elsewhere. System M&M3E, and then PC expectations. I would expect them to create their own characters. I know they really enjoy doing that. Um, Limited sandbox. They have in the past asked me to railroad them slightly more than I do, but they like having a lot of options, and so I'm going to leave them significant autonomy.
Cool.
Um, and then I would map out the major beats of the story. And so I'm just going to go ahead and do that in here.
And this is
Uh,
very much how this relates to writing as well. Talking about an RPG, and yes, you write out story beats.
yeah. So yeah, so I'm going to think about where do I want this to go. I personally like to start from the end. I ask myself, okay, the end result is going to be this fight against this nightmare entity. I'll figure out who they are and everything like that in a little bit. But right now, I want this to be the end fight. And once they succeed at that, then that's going to resolve the story. Where they're starting, I'm thinking they're going to be street level heroes, probably around power level 5, which in Mutants and Masterminds is roughly equivalent to like a third level character in D&D as in terms of power scaling. Basically this is your costumed fighter who like has a very basic power or has a few intro gadgets, but is nowhere near even like Nightwing or Batman.
I'll bring this up as well, TJ, because oftentimes with one shots, you're not starting off with a first level character.
Right.
This industry standard, haha, industry as if this is monolithic group is third level, but you can start at any level. You can do five if you want to give them some more tricks and stuff like that. I'm talking about 5e. I guess in yours that would be like a level 7 or something. You can start them off at 1 if you really want to move up to like level 10 or something like that and really give them the chance to wield some strange weapons, make sure that they are not new at the game
Right.
because they won't know how to use all these weird mechanics.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's going to come up especially when we start talking about encounters. Because also as you get higher up, you have a lot more options to pick from and a lot more powerful things. And so it's going to take players a little bit of time, especially if they're new, to figure out what their options even are on their turn. Um, for the sake of clarity, just kind of some rough outline. There is actually a document released by Green Ronin, who makes Mutants and Masterminds, in partnership with DC. They have a couple books out for playing in the DC Comics universe.
Mm.
So if you want to just borrow that universe, that those documents are available. But because those documents exist, I can tell you with certainty that Superman is built at power level 18. Batman is built, I think, at 16. Because he has a lot of gadgets and stuff like that. They kind of make up the difference. Once you're looking at power levels like 6, 7, 8, that's where you're dealing with people like the Question, you know. And so
Mm.
when I'm talking about power level 5, that's about where the power scaling is. Comparing to D&D, because that's the language a lot of people have. Um, I would estimate that Superman you would need to be probably somewhere in the low 20s level in D&D in order to create something similar to Superman. Probably like 22, 23.
And to
Um,
demonstrate, most of them don't go past 20. So yeah,
yeah,
that's where
most characters don't go
Superman
past
is.
20. So you can realistically build, like if you look at a monk or something, you can realistically build someone like Batman or Green Lantern or something very right about level 20. And in Mutants and Masterminds, that's somewhere floating somewhere around 16, 15 to 17. Um, and like I said, power level 5 is roughly equivalent to level 3 in D&D. But yeah, so for this Probably going to start them as street level heroes somewhere in the vicinity of level 5. So I need to figure out what's my initiating event. What is it going to be that's going to introduce them to this problem? I'm going to use an NPC that I created for a previous campaign called the Detective. Don't be afraid to reuse things
Oh yeah.
when you're
Especially if
doing
they're not
this.
familiar with it, they'll never know.
Yeah. So the detective is going to be recruit their help to help is going to recruit the party to help with a murder. Um, and then I know that my last step is going to be facing the nightmare entity. And now I have to figure out for my story beats, I just think about what is it going to take to get them from there to here? Like in very broad strokes, right? They're going to have to become aware that there are nightmare entities. Um, they're going to have to identify the entity. I want to, before they identify it, have a false lead to give them something, something that looks like it's going to be the entity. It turns out it's not. It's
Ooh.
going to give them some information. Identify the entity and then face the entity. I think that like for major story beats, that's all you really need is something like that. Just like a few things. I need to get to these steps. And then when you start mapping it out in more detail later, you can start filling in like how am I going to do this? Who's this false lead going to be? How am I going to make sure that they can identify the entity? All of that stuff needs to happen, but it should happen later. Because at this point, I would move into thinking about the characters. So my step 3 is making NPCs slash adoptables. Like I said, if you are going to be making characters for them to adopt and play, you're going to have to build them. And at this point, you're thinking through, okay, what characters do I need for this story to work? You could also, if it is a campaign where they're building, if it is a one shot where they're building the characters, then this would be the point where I'm thinking, what do I need to tell them? Like in this story, I'm going to need to tell them, hey, they need to be street level superheroes, but they're going to advance. And so think about being a superhero in a superhero world who's operating at the street level but has aspirations getting stronger. Someone that would get recruited into investigating, like, because that's where we're going to be starting. And so I would tell my players, think in those terms when you're building your character. But if I'm building them for adoptables, I'm going to be thinking about that. I'm also thinking about my NPCs is where I'm going to start designing what is the nightmare entity? Who are the other players in this world? Are there any other superheroes they might run across? Are there other villains that they're going to have to deal with along the way that maybe are working for this entity, stuff like that. And so at this point, I'm starting to populate that and figure out any documents that they need to have. So this journal thing, super handy. I'll often just make things in there like here's a document that explains Liberty City. Here's a map of the setting. Here's information that you need to know that your characters know about the setting so that you can easily reference it during game. Um, but yeah, at that point I would build some NPCs, some adoptables. I would especially think about my big bad. Like for this, I would be thinking about building my nightmare entity. In fact, I'm going to go ahead and
I'm gonna throw this out there as you're doing that as well, and that is reskinning.
yes.
If you're building NPCs, whatever media you like, like let's say you love watching reality TV and you just love I don't know, RuPaul's Drag Race. Drag a couple of those characters out of there and turn them into characters in your world. If you watch vampire shows or read sci-fi books. You can take people completely out of context,
Mhm.
and by giving them stats just based on your imagination, you can change the name. You can keep it similar. But when these things rhyme, that's how a lot of writers come up with their ideas for sure and use it in this context of making a one shot, making a game.
Yeah. Yeah, you can borrow from basically anywhere. And like I said, you can even use settings that exist, you know, just take whatever you need and work with it. Make the adjustments that you need to, especially for the system. Um, Maybe you have a D&D character that you really loved and you want to try porting them over to Mutants and Masterminds. One thing that I love to do when I'm working on a story is I'll take characters that I'm going to use in the story and just make them NPCs in the campaign that I'm running so
Mm.
that I can get a sense for how they interact with other people. You know what I mean? And it's part of my writing process even is as I'm fleshing out these characters is to do something like that. And so,
I totally
borrow
just
from it.
did that with writing my first act and who gives the quest, who gives the
Sure.
quest. And I thought of a character that a player had, like a chaos magic sorcerer, and I'm like, okay, I have that character sheet already created. They're already at like a level 12 or something like that. I can use that as an NPC in this.
Yeah. Yeah. Borrow from everywhere, and as I've heard it. I don't remember how it was exactly phrased, but yeah, borrow from everywhere, steal from nowhere. Like, don't don't just rip stuff off entirely, but as you said, make it rhyme. With something
Heck
that
yeah.
you're familiar with. At this point, I think it would be a good time to take a break and just design one character. Just follow through the whole way through designing a character so that you get a sense for what it's going to be like to make one character. So that later on, when you go to finish this one shot, you can refer back to that and have the experience every stage of it.
For sure. And I think that you wrote, I talked about story beats. And so I have on my sheet here Act 1, 2, the middle, Act 3, and climax. Where is that character going to come into the story?
Right.
And I love the idea of building one fully out. You guys can write some notes on the side or come up with different ideas, but let's build one fully for sure during this. What do you say? 10-minute break, TJ?
Yeah, let's go ahead and take 10 minutes. I'll work on the detective. Like I said, the screen sharing will still be on, but obviously, as people are watching this, I'll be in the chat and available to
Yeah,
talk
pop over
through
to
this.
something else, open a new window, look up some things, figure out what kind of character you want as a interesting NPC and where they're going to fit in your outline. Cool. So, TJ, what are we looking at here? Who are we creating?
So the detective is, like I said, a character that I've used before. I have an actual sheet for him elsewhere, but I've wanted to work on him. He's very he relies upon gadgets and skills, so he doesn't actually have any powers of his own. So I skipped that bit. But I did use some power effects in his equipment. That's how Mutants Masterminds handles gadgets: is that you create equipment that has powers. Um, and so he has this detective's hat that gives him accurate hearing, so he can pinpoint things by hearing them. Analytical taste, if he tastes something, he can determine the chemical composition of it. Dream awareness, so he's aware of things that happen that come from the dream realm in his vicinity. His vision counters illusion, so he sees through illusions, and it enhances his awareness. And then he has a bunch of advantages here. Like he has a lot of contacts he can call on. He's very well informed. He has an opportunity anytime he encounters something new to just do a quick roll to see if he already knows about it. He can track people. The equipment advantage is how he buys his gear, stuff like that. So he has a bunch of things like that, and then a bunch of skills. Um, he's a good boxer, not as great with knives, better with handguns, um, great with investigation and seeing things, so on intimidation, not great at driving, but he's going to do it anyway. You know, that type of character.
Not great at driving. I love that.
Yeah.
Oh my,
He
for
will
sure. I was a
probably get,
little, yeah.
I was going to say, just from his defenses, he will probably get hit when you try to attack him. And he can usually handle that, but you're going to have a heck of a time trying to mind control him. His will is very strong.
Well, I love that you have mind control involved in yours because I did a much less crunchy one. I basically just wrote down the standard stats of a
Mm,
mind flayer, but with that silly idea that I threw out there about RuPaul's Drag Race, I looked up past winners and decided to use one from Sweden. So
mm.
Admira the Thunder, the Mind Flayer. And the nice thing is that I got some quotes off of the show from this character, so I can really put some words into their mouth. I and that just like creates this character really easily, but changing them from a human to a mind flayer and making them a bigger than life personality seems like a fun idea.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, so once you have a few characters down, you have an idea on who you're dealing with as your party and what types of things you're going to be facing, like this mind flayer. Uh, you can start thinking about encounters. Now, as you're working on characters and things like that, some parts of the story are going to get more fleshed out in your mind. Like you now have this mind flayer character, so you probably have some thoughts about at some point these characters are going to have to go into the Underdark where the mind flayers. You know what I mean? Hey, now that I know that the I have this mind flayer to deal with, maybe I'm going to be dealing with more abominations. You start thinking about things like the intellect devourers and
Mm.
other creatures that are associated with mind flayers. Starting to kind of get the feel for the story encounters that they're going to run into. And so yeah, designing encounters. The thing with designing encounters is that you have to think through how difficult it's going to be. Like right at the beginning, the first fight you have is going to have to be at the level that the characters are starting.
Hmm.
From then on, everything is very planned in terms of like, I want them to be leveling up quickly. And if you're using an XP system rather than a benchmark system, then you're going to have to be thinking about how do I give them enough XP to get to the level that they need to be at for the final fight.
Build into the one shot when they level up, most likely, most
Yeah,
likely.
yeah. If you're going to have them leveling up, if you're not, then it's think about that. Like, they're not going to be leveling up, so I'm not going to give them a whole bunch of stuff that's going to give them so much XP that they do level up and then breaks the
Mm.
plan. So you're thinking about things like that. You're also thinking about timing. Like we said, because we're talking about one shots, we are very conscious of the amount of time everything is going to take. Um, for combat, it depends on the system. D&D is very can be very fast paced. You know, you do your attack, you calculate the damage, you move on. Um, you can do that very quickly. in Mutants and Masterminds, there's a lot of, okay, I roll this, and now you roll to counter it, and now we roll to figure out how much that affects you. And, there's a lot of back and forth for every action that you do. And so you think about it being longer. Also, because it's very hard to kill characters in Mutants and Masterminds, you're thinking about the combat taking longer because it's going to be you're looking for a lucky break to knock them unconscious, basically. Unless they're a minion. Minion stats are much easier. But uh
Hero versus hero.
yeah,
Those have to be limited in a one shot. You can't do too many. Yeah.
yeah, because it's gonna take too long. So for D&D, I would think about it in terms of, if they are experienced players, you could probably get away with thinking of the encounter as being, maybe, I'd say about 5 minutes per character. Or no, I'm sorry. I was thinking about something else. 2 minutes per character per encounter level.
Mm.
So you have 5 characters. You're dealing with a fifth level combat. Um, 5 times 5 is 25. All right. Think about, this could take as much as 50 minutes to have this combat.
And that's
Um,
per round as well.
no, that's for the encounter.
Okay.
So it probably won't take quite that long, but it could. Um, Mutants and Masterminds, I would actually make it a slightly longer number, you know. So, but if you have that in mind, knowing it could take 50 minutes. All right, talking about a 3 to 4 hour campaign like you were talking about, one shot, or 3 to 5, you probably only want two, maybe three of those
Yeah.
planned. Um, but if you think that they're going to go faster, adjust your numbers. You know what I mean? Do the read yourself a little bit. Um, but you want to be thinking about that. Like, how fast are these characters going to go through this combat? How many of these can I realistically fit in and still have time for any of the story? Stuff like that. Do I have Does that mean that I'm going to have to build in a couple much smaller encounters? Like, okay, I can't afford, 3 50-minute combats. I'm going to build in a few that are third level. I'm going to build and make the cap one, seventh, maybe eighth level. Um, you know, doing some quick math like that gives you a rough idea on how many combat encounters you can really do, and how much time you have for story, and you know thinking about what and how many encounters do I need that are at this level or at that level. um so if you want to design your first encounter, or beginning at the you what level are you building, you're assuming your character's starting at?
I'm assuming they're starting at level 5, and I'm guessing I'm going to have 3 characters in this particular one. Yeah.
Right. All right. So yeah, you're thinking, so you probably don't want your first combat to go super long. So you might want to build something that is around level 3.
Hmm.
Um, because then, just quickly in your head thinking that out, that's not super, that's maybe a half hour, right, of combat.
Yeah.
Um, of the combat encounter. And that includes all the talking through options and explaining, the hits and the crits and everything like that. So you've now dedicated 30 minutes of your time to that first encounter.
Yeah, out of that 5 hours, like, the amount of times you can do combat really lowers down. And I love the idea of writing this out as a script, like with acts to it.
Right.
Where should you have those encounters in order to hit, like emotional beats?
Right. Yeah. And so as you're one thing that what it see it's very easy to approach a one shot and think of the whole story, and then start populating with all these things. But if you do it this way, what you allow it to do is allow a lot of this stuff to kind of help you shape the story.
Mm.
You're not necessarily thinking about plot at this point, but you have just, by kind of designing a couple NPCs, by thinking about the combat structure you're going to have and how many of them you're going to have and where you're going to be, you start to frame out your story. Since you have your major beats and you compare these things to that, it's all starting to come together. And so when we get to the point where we're filling in details, it's going to be a lot easier.
Hey. So love that idea. Do we want to take a break here to let people kind of like get a sketch of an encounter with their NPC they created, or you got some more notes before we get there?
Yeah, I think now is a good time to design the encounters. I'm not going to do that very much on here. I'll stop screen sharing for this break because in order to design encounters in Foundry, I have to make all the NPCs and then drop them into this encounter,
Ah,
which I'm just not going to have time to do in this break. Um, Obviously, people will when they're designing, but I'll make some. What I'll do is I'll make some notes under my basics thing. I'll make some notes on the encounter.
yeah, short period of time. Just get some general things about, like how does it start? How do you want it to go? And how
Yeah,
long do you think this is going to take based on the elements you've put into it?
right.
Awesome.
Yeah, I think that'd be a great. I think that'd be a great place for a break to think about that.
Heck yeah. 5 minutes. We'll be right back, y'all. Awesome.
Okay.
Little short time to talk about encounters and thoughts on ideas. I'm thinking rust monsters, definitely trying to hurt the party in the middle of the combat, maybe an infestation in a dark cavern, and try and take them down a notch. Also, so I can give them magical items afterwards. But in the meantime, I make them feel like, oh no, what am I going to do without a sword or without my armor?
Right. Awesome. Yeah, I'm planning a first encounter where they're going to meet the detective. He's going to show up partway through the encounter and then be able to explain why he's there and recruit them. But that encounter itself is going to be, like I said, they're going to be power level 5, so I'm going to throw a power level 7 at them because it's just one guy with 4 minions in Mutants and Masterminds. How combat works very briefly is that you whittle your people down. So
Mm.
if they fail by 1 degree, if they have 1 degree of failure, then going forward they now take a -1 on all toughness checks, and so it increases the odds that they're going to fail more later. And so that's how you whittle each other down instead of doing hit points. But minions don't get degrees of failure. If they fail, they're just unconscious, done. So they're easy to knock out. Is the point of them?
And that's interesting too, because it's not, blood or whatever, it's just knocked out,
Yeah.
like that is very much of the superhero ilk of you punch 3 guys in the face and then they're never heard from again.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm thinking that's gonna be about a 40-minute encounter, and I'll bring the detective in when I feel like it's getting near the end, so he can help out and then explain. Um, and that gives me my rough outline. Probably gonna build a fire-based character for that, but I might change that if the party comp is different. Um, and so that gives me my ideas so that when I go to build the NPCs to actually build the encounter later, I know everything that I'm gonna need to. And then the last step is really just fleshing out the details, formalizing my notes. So this is where I would go into my document here, and I would start adding in, okay, Act One. What needs to happen in Act One to get me from this first character event all the way through to where I need Act Two to start. And like I said, with these story beats, I want them to get Act Two is probably going to be pursuing the false lead, finding out their false lead, and then the end of Act Two is going to be realizing who the real enemy, and then Act Three is going to be finding and facing that enemy. So step one needs to get me to the point where they are pursuing leads. So I'm going to be thinking about, okay, as I'm filling in my notes, I'm going to be thinking about things like what what's this encounter with the detective going to be like? Are there any things that I really need to make sure are said? I'm going to put in my notes document. He has to say these things. He has to give them this information. He has to provide these steps. He has to offer to recruit them. What happens if they refuse to work with him, but do want to pursue this mystery that's been presented to them?
Yeah,
They
got
just
to
want,
plan for those contingencies.
yeah, how am I going to handle that? Are they going to just kind of run into the detective every once in a while, or are they going to ignore him, or are they going to fight him, or whatever? I'm gonna want to start thinking about that type of stuff, writing out, and I'm not gonna do a full script. This is something that's very much a personal preference issue. You know, sessions like you would see in Critical Role and stuff like that are very heavily scripted. They thought through. It's very clearly defined what's going to happen. I imagine he actually writes some of the lines he says out loud. He actually writes those ahead of time and stuff like that. There's a lot of stuff that's very heavily planned out. I don't roll that way. That's just not how I GM. And so my notes are gonna be a lot more sparse. I'm just gonna have, as you see, I'm writing everything in bullet points. I'm not writing out paragraphs of information unless there's something I specifically want to say. Like I'll often write out in a paragraph form the intro to the game when we first start. Here's Liberty City, here's the situation, here's the backstory, here's what you know, and then from then on, everything is bullet points. I need to cover this, I need to cover that. Um,
I'll
but
throw this
whatever
out there
work.
as, oh, sorry.
Oh, I was just gonna say whatever works for people. Whatever works for you. Pursue. Write that into your notes.
I'll throw this out there as well for anybody who is, maybe considering writing a one shot or playing TTRPGs and has watched, Dimension 20, Critical Role, and stuff like that. Those are edited. I was talking about reality TV with Drag Race earlier. Those are so different from what actually happens that do not watch one of those and go, oh, this is going to be so exciting and, like perfectly timed and, these amazing things happened. Those are written just as much as any Seinfeld episode. Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah. That's. I think it is worth noting that things like that are, um, they're entertainment first. These are actors that are using the game as a vehicle for the story they're trying to tell.
Mm.
Which is fine. I have nothing against that. It doesn't interest me personally. I don't watch those. Um, but there's nothing wrong with that. But that is going to create a very different vibe than we are going to play a game together and craft a story together. Um, that is built on this system. Like the it is the starting point presenting a show, or is the starting point playing a game? That's going to create a different feel. And
Cool.
yeah, people should be aware of that. That if you're doing a one shot and you're starting from playing a game, um, you can't plan it in a way where you're thinking it's going to play out Dimension 20 because it's just not.
And things happen. For people who are
Yeah.
new on this, you have good games, you have bad games. You still
Mhm.
play it through all the way. You try to rescue it as much as possible if things aren't going your way or the story gets sidetracked. Don't worry about, oh, I didn't plan for this contingency. I didn't expect you guys to turn left right here, like into the
Yeah.
swamp. Uh, you're gonna have those little failures and things like that, and that's perfectly fine. This is a teaching tool for fiction so much, where if
Right.
you're able to kind of expand your mind and think about things, learning how to do these one shots and TTRPGs can very much help you as a writer think about more contingencies, think about plot holes and stuff like that. So, really go into it, realizing you're an amateur and you're going to have fun at this. Have fun. Don't try and make everything perfect and scripted.
Yeah. When people ask me what TTRPGs are, I tell them very often. I tell them it's collaborative story.
Yeah.
That's that's how I approach it. There are different ways to approach it, but that's how I approach it. This is where I'm creating a structure, I'm creating an outline of a story, and then I am putting it before my friends, and we are together hanging out and socializing and having fun and creating the story from that outline. And that, like I said, that's how I approach it. I think that's actually how I got into these games. Was that when I was about 18, I was trying to write a story and I was having trouble with it. And I found out about these games. I was like, oh, I'll practice by playing the games and learning how to tell stories. And that's what got me where I am.
Nice. Very
So
cool. So I do think I that we're gonna have I about 15 minutes or so in the Discord. You guys, any questions? anything you've been working on you want to show to other people at Right Hive, hop into the Discord for this workshop right here. Tell us about what you're working on, and TJ will be there to kind of talk about my ideas and help you guys along towards building a one shot, as well as the crunchy stuff. TJ
Yeah.
is into that. You need mechanics help. We got a little bit of time right here, and let's get questions answered for sure. TJ, thank you very much, absolutely. And do want to also remind people November 1st and 2nd, your fundraiser, your 24-hour my one shot is going to be going. Y'all can look up information at temclaughlin.weebly.com. And anything else you want to tell people about? Absolutely.
Um, yeah, so like I said, the event we do in November is for Extra Life, for fundraising for Children's Miracle Network hospitals. If that's of interest to you as well, please let me know. I'll point you to get how to get signed up to support your local hospital as well. And keep an eye out. Tall Tales right here is currently out of print because I'm rewriting it. So
Mm.
hopefully by the time you're watching the video, I'll have some information on when that will be available.
Heck yeah, toss that in the Discord when it's there or a release date if it is soon coming. Absolutely.
Thank you very much, and I guess we'll see you in chat.
Thank you, TJ.
Thank you.